kickoff informational session of Sparking Literacy Phase 2. I want to introduce a couple people, and then I'm going to ask that you all would get in the chat room and write your name, your organization, and your email. That would just be great for everybody to be able to see who's here. And I wish that we had time for everybody to really introduce themselves, but in the interest of time, if you'd get in that chat, that would be good. The first person I want to introduce is our PEC program specialist, Canyon Lonis. And he's a welcome addition. He's only been here for a short time, but he's already making an impact. And I think you know that because you've been hearing from him. And I love it that he's a former kindergarten and first grade teacher and also a current doctoral student at WVU. So that's really exciting. So he has a lot of enthusiasm and experience. And as you choose to engage and write your application, you'll hear and see a lot of him. And it's also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Allison Dakin. She's been with us since the inception 3 years ago of the Sparking Early Literacy, and she is invaluable. And I think many of you know her, but if you don't, you're really going to enjoy that. She's Assistant Provost of Graduate Academic Affairs and also a literacy professor at WVU. And then I'm anxious to introduce Kelly Griffith from the Department of Ed. And she's a coordinator in early and elementary learning, and she'll tell you more about herself in the next few minutes, but she has a great background and she's certainly hit the ground running in her 7 months at WVDE. Now, one person that we don't have with us today because she has her board meeting, very important board meeting, is the program manager for education at the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation. And that is our funding foundation. And Melody is the person that will work with Sparking Early Literacy. And she's really hands-on, and she couldn't be here today due to that board meeting, but she sends her regards. And once again, I encourage you, I see some of you dropping your name and email and affiliation in the chat. We appreciate that. Okay, I just want to give you a little overview of Sparking Early Literacy growth in West Virginia. We're phase 2, which means, and we had a very successful phase 1, but it's a collaborative effort between PEC and the Benedum Foundation and the West Virginia Department of Ed. They have been invaluable, amazing partner to guide us, really a thought partner and provide background and resource. So we appreciate that too. So we have that trifecta going into this. And of course, WVU is a big part of this because as you'll hear from Allison later, they have an army of literacy consultants that are helping each of the grantees. So that's exciting. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about Benedum. They, many of you have received monies from Benedum, and you know that they're in West Virginia and southwestern Pennsylvania, but most of the funds go to West Virginia. And they really have a wide variety of things that they support, but they've been really hands-on with us. And they have a wonderful legacy in early literacy and innovation for several decades. And their chair of their board right now, Lloyd Jackson, was the former chair of Senate Education for several years, and he created lots of policies and bills that are enacted right now. And PEC is the organization that will facilitate the grant application process and selection. But I just wanted you to know who all's right there with us. And we're very fortunate, to have these partners and just thank them. Now, the purpose of this grant is to solicit and fund innovative and transformational ideas, initiatives, and interventions to high-need schools and student populations to support early literacy growth of children in West Virginia, birth to age 8. And last year was the first year, and Benedum funded 9 projects, and we were lucky to receive additional funding for 3 more from the Steely Foundation. And this year we have some other foundations that are interesting, kind of matching, if they work in the region. And just to talk a little bit about the need for this, I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say how needed this is. But in West Virginia, the statewide average for third grade reading proficiency in 2021 was 33%. And that's down 11 percentage points from the school year 2019. So that's alarming. And we realize that COVID went into that and, that type of thing. But it's just, and I know one thing, if you think about like the need and everybody realizing it, and that's why the sparking early literacy is so important. But right in the legislature, they are discussing bills that have to do with children reading by third grade and what to do about it if they don't. And I certainly don't know the ins and outs of it, but the very fact that they are discussing it and it's already passed through the House shows you that this is a need. This is really on everybody's mind. So that just give you a little bit of background. I'm happy when we do Q&A to answer anything else about the grants. But also I neglected to say, not only in the chat, do we want your information, but any questions you have. We are going to have a nice Q&A session at the end of this where you can verbally ask questions. But if you want to get them in the chat while you're thinking about them, and then we have our wonderful Chrissy Glantz, who's a big part of Sparking Early Literacy and has shepherded us through everything and a big part of the RFP and the resource guide. But she's going to man that chat and make sure we answer your questions. So that would be great if you would do that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Griffith right now.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Donna, for that warm welcome and the kind words. I'm always happy and excited to share about our partnership and our collaboration together. As Donna mentioned, I'm new to the department. I am a coordinator for early and elementary. I think I've been here about 7 months, not quite 7 months. However, I am not new to education. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I think this is either my 18th or 19th year in the field of education, and the bulk of those was I spent my days in a first grade classroom. So when we talk about early literacy, it is very dear to my heart. So this work is very important to me, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So I appreciate you, Donna, and your team so much. Donna's asked me to share a little bit about the transformative system of support today, and then also about the campaign and a few of the initiatives in the campaign and how closely they align with the grant. I thought that information would be helpful for you all as you get ready to work on your proposals. So the transformative system of support came about, I believe, in 2014, as we're talking about the proficiency and the gap in reading proficiency for third grade. They came up with a state policy 2512, which is the transformative system of support. And what it is a statewide approach for all counties to implement programs that will be helpful, not just at school age, not when a kid just comes in at kindergarten, but we know as educators that long before kindergarten does language and literacy start. So we're looking from birth to age 8. And how we can help these students be successful and try to close that gap by third grade. So I hate to read, but I want to give you a little bit of statistics when we're talking about third grade predictors. So we know with our data and our research that we've done on this, that third grade is a huge predictor for school success. It even links to dropouts for graduation. If a child is not reading proficiently by the end of third grade, that the graduation dropout increases for that child. It's a big critical milestone because if they're not reading by third grade, they often start lagging in other content areas as well. We know that 85% of curriculum after third grade is reading. So whether it's science or social studies or even math, if they're not reading, 85% of their day is frustrating for them. by the end of third grade, if they're not hitting that milestone, then 74% of those readers will just never catch up. That's 3/4 of our students. They just never catch up after third grade. That just breaks my heart. We just know that after third grade, that literacy is the currency of all of their other learning. So it's just crucial that we help these kids and close that gap. So I appreciate all of the people. I'm seeing their names on here, and it's exciting to know that this many people are interested in helping these young learners. So after the state policy came about in 2014, in 2015 was when the Campaign for Grade Level Reading launched. And I'm not sure how much everyone knows about that on here, but we partnered with the June Harless Center, and we hired 5 these specialists that help build our capacity in the state. And with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, there's some pillars in there that really are the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the campaign. And that's the 3 that I want real quick. One of them is school readiness. And school readiness is, like I said, more than just getting the kid to school in kindergarten. It starts at birth. And we see that very often that a lot of our low poverty areas or our high poverty areas, they don't have the books at home or the literacy rich environments. They may not have the well visits that they should have. So we have created some tools that help not just the child, but the community, stakeholders, parents, caregivers that can help with this until throughout as the kid gets ready to go to school. One of the tools is Ready, Set, Go. It's on our website that you could look at. That's a great tool. It helps families, just lots of information. It builds relationships with to increase support with medical providers, information about transitions in and out of those early prior to first grade classrooms. And then also we have the pre-K, the universal pre-K. That has been a huge factor for us. I think it's 85% of kindergartners, or close to it, 84, 85% of kindergartners 2 years ago had been to pre-K, which is huge. And our pre-K is nationally known. It is one of the best. I think we got it like a 9 out of 10 on how they judge those. So we're very proud of our universal pre-K. And we also have a Find My West Virginia pre-K tool also online that helps families see where their child would be a good fit in those communities. And then one that's very dear to my heart initiative is, of course, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. It is where, if you're not familiar with it, a child that is born in West Virginia can sign up. From birth to 5, they get a book once a month. And so we know, I don't have time to read all the research to you, but we know when a child has, I think it's even just 25 books in their home, how that increases their chances to success in literacy. So I believe we are up to like 47 to 49% of all West Virginia kids in that age group receiving those books now. So we are really busy trying to find partners and getting that sustainable for all counties, as we want all West Virginia children registered for that. Another area of the campaign that aligns closely to the grant is extended learning. We have seen that, studies show that even just as short as 6 weeks of extra learning in the summer can provide significant gains in reading. So low-income students lose an average of more than 2 months in reading achievement every summer compared to their middle-income peers. And then by the end of 5th grade, if that continues, as you can see, they're almost 3 years behind their peers by 5th grade, if there's not some type of extended learning, summer learning for these kids to be involved in. So, in the state, we've launched Summer Soul. Some of the counties, I think we had 30-some counties involved in that last year. We also had the Blue Ribbon Book Club, where it's kind of an extension off of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. where first and second graders receive books, and then the next year, first, second, and third receive them. So we're extending that as we get funds. And then any kind of extended during the year really helps with the proficiency, with giving the kids extra opportunities to be involved in not just academics, but social and emotional as well, has been seen to give increase to these kids when it comes to their literacy. Lots of family engagement activities as well with extended learning has been a big plus for the campaign. And then last but not least, of course, high quality instruction, which has been a big part of the partnership with the June Harless Center. Recently in 2021, last year, we were able to expand our partnership with June Harless from the 5 literacy specialists to 7 early and learning specialists. We kind of changed their roles because we expanded what we're doing. We're not just literacy, but we're also offering other content and integrated content for them to support the counties. But all 55 counties have a literacy specialist that supports them and gives them opportunities for professional development as the counties need it, support in literacy grants, anything that they need help with. Those 7 specialists are there to help them, and that's really been key to our success with the campaign. So you know, any type of request that a county might have, we can definitely, we have a menu of services, but we can also definitely tweak it to fit their specific needs. So we have, I guess, almost like relationships that we've built with these counties that really helps build our capacity from the department. So, and that's the 3 big pieces of, I believe, the proposal for you all. And I'll stop there. I could talk all day when it comes to the campaign, but I want to be respectful of your time. And if, like Donna said, if you'll be kind enough to put those in the chat, I'll be sure and try to get you some answers to any of that. If I can be of any help.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I just think these stats that you gave are so compelling. And I think about myself, at my career in teaching was mostly 3rd grade and 4th grade. And to think that, you know, 85% of their day, if they're not able to read well, is frustrating. So it just breaks my heart to think about.
Oh, it does mine too. It does mine too. And, you know, it is sad. It is sad, but I do think that there's things that we can do, these types of initiatives and grabbing them early, because I think sometimes, you know, by the time they even come, there's one stat I didn't get to read to you, but there's one stat that these high poverty homes, if they're not in these rich environments with literacy, then they hear, I think it's 30 million fewer words by the time they come to school. So their language is so delayed and behind, and you know, we're just playing catch up all the time. And so we've got to start before, so we don't have to play catch up when they get to school.
Yeah. And I applaud you and the department for everything you have in place there to help with that. And I know, you know, your literacy department is really well respected out in the field, as well as with the legislators. I see how they respond and seek out, you know, your advice. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Donna.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Allison now. She's got the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts of what we're going to do.
Well, thank you. And thank you. I was sitting here thinking, I might have to leave West Virginia University and go work for the Department of Ed after hearing that the amazing work that they're doing, you know, and so thank you, Kelly. It's interesting. I saw Dolly Parton, if anyone saw on the TV last night with the Country Music Awards, and when my young daughter, who was a recipient of the books, was about 6 years old, we heard a Dolly song come on, and she said, I said, "This is Dolly Parton." And she said, "Dolly Parton's a singer? I thought she was a librarian." So like, you know, how the generations see people differently, but all these great efforts. Here's what I love about all these great efforts and this particular project, they are aligned. And, you know, much to the credit of WVPEC for making that decision early on to say, let's see what everybody, what the state is doing and how do we support those efforts? Because ultimately that supports the participants in these grants. So one, I know that we're going to come back to those areas of school readiness, high quality in instruction, and extended learning as we walk through this. But before I talk about the RFP, I don't know if would anyone feel comfortable going over down to the reaction button, the little smiley face, and giving a thumbs up if you were, if you perhaps came to our session last year or put in a grant or considered putting in a grant last year. So basically, if you have some familiarity with what we're doing here today, put your, if you wouldn't mind, put your thumb up or a smiley face or a heart or one of those kind of reactions, just trying to gauge, where folks are coming from. Okay. So it looks like this RFP process, this grant process, to most of the folks in this room is relatively new. And so here's the other thing I love about this grant, besides supporting the efforts of the state, is that we've created an RFP for you. WVPEC has put out an RFP unlike any that I have seen. And in 20 years, Kelly, I see you're 19 years, I'll match you 20, and 20 years in this field of, as a faculty member looking for grants, seeking grants, there's many times where I pick up an RFP and think, do these people actually want to fund me or not? Because it's not very clear. There's a lot of perhaps hoops and such. So I think the difference with this grant and this really is that everything you need to know is in the RFP. If you can't find what you need to know in the RFP or need a confirmation, there are multiple ways that this grant, and we'll talk about this, Canyon will talk a little bit about it, I will too, how you could be supported in this process. So I guess the kind of the cornerstone of the support is this RFP, which is about a 20-page document that includes all the information that you would need. So I am going to share my screen, and what I am going to do, and for those of you, Kenya, maybe you could drop the link in the box if you don't mind. For those of you who have not downloaded the RFP yet, it is right on the WVPEC website. So you could follow along with my screen. If you have a paper copy, you could follow along, maybe jot down some notes. I'm just going to highlight some of the pieces. I am not going to read a 20-page RFP to you, although I am a fluent reader, that would be quite boring. So first of all, what I'm going to share with you, I'm going to point out specific pages, and mostly these are the charts and the figures and also the timeline. So let me start off by saying, so who? If you are in this session right now, you must be part of a public or a private school, an early childhood center, an after-school program, a literacy organization, a nonprofit. Perhaps you're part of a college or a university, or you are involved in some way in an organization that wants to focus on improved literacy in our state. It's really important. I want to be very clear, and I think it's very clear in this communication that this is a project that encompasses literacy. Okay, this is reading and writing, and a lot of times you'll find us saying, both in the documentation and on this call, as measured by the third grade reading assessment, because that's our first big cornerstone of testing that we could reliably hang our hat on. So when we give stats on third grade reading scores, we know that that's the place that we want to get all this improvement coming in, so it can be represented on the test. But this is absolutely a reading, a writing, an oral language grant. This is a motivation to read grant, all of these things that would contribute to greater literacy. So, and I will say, if we could just put some questions in the chat, I'm going to scroll down, and I apologize for the scrolling, but this is the document, is request for proposals. Make sure that you are looking at the new document that says 22-23, and if not the last year's, because there have been significant to some of the process. However, what holds true is ultimately the goal of the project, which is increased literacy. So I am going to scroll down to page 12 of this document. Table of contents outlines everything. I'm going to go right to what is required and talk through some of these items. Okay, so on page 12, We just heard from Kelly. And so, probably one of the most important questions that folks ask is, what is the focus? Well, again, aligned with the campaign for grade level reading, we have identified that every grant must. So I'm going to start off with all these musts and directives. You must choose a focus area. School readiness.
Allison, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can't see your screen.
Oh,
So if you could please share it, just in case
I'll share
folks
that again.
move over to the web. Thanks.
Now, yes.
There we
Yes.
go.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Well, that box was around mine, but this is good because then you missed all the nauseating scrolling that I had to go to get to page 12. Okay, so I am on page 12 of the RFP. Much of what is on this list, well, much of it, all of it is explained in the RFP, and I'll point out even the pages if you have a paper copy and want to jot down some notes. So thanks, Kenyon. Again, what we're going to ask every single project to do is align with either a school readiness project, an extended learning, or high quality instruction. Your project, what we found last year was, in some instances, it was very hard to separate those three. So you'll find when we walk through what the actual submission guidelines are, you may be choosing 2 of these. You may be choosing 3 of these, but ultimately you've got to at least choose one. You've got to identify the focus area for your project. So I'm looking at my second screen here. So the second caveat of required components for this grant must take place in West Virginia, work with West Virginia children from birth to age 8. And so what we also want to do is we want to prioritize these low performing schools, students who are at need in these grants. And what we'll find in both the RFP and the supplementary resource guide, which we will talk about in a moment, is you will find information on how to find these folks. However, if you are sitting here in the Zoom here this morning, you know how to find at need learners because you are working with them, very likely. And so what we want to do is we want to, again, focus on low performing learners. We want to target, it is a requirement to target a specialized population. And so this is a slightly different, I saw some hands go up for folks who were familiar with the grant process last year. And this is a change from last year where we really want you to hone in on a specific population, whether it's first grade learners, ELL students who live with their grandparents, students who struggle with reading, students who are in marginalized groups. Because what we want you to do is to justify the why. And so whereas you might be working with a population of K-3 students, and you want this project to improve the literacy for the K-3 students, what we really want is for you to focus on what their need is beyond needing more literacy work, right? So we want to target whether it be special ed, and you need to be very clear about that in the grant. So I guess I'll hold questions till the end. Another one of the musts, I feel like I'm being a real mom here. I'm giving all the directives and then I'm opening time for questions. One of the other musts, and this is different from last year, is the grants for these up to $50,000 literacy projects. We must have a collaborative partner. And so what is a collaborative partner, right? So a collaborative partner can be a range of time, investment, interest, engagement with you. But what we want in the way we define these collaborative partners are 2 entities working together for a shared goal. That is it. So, and quite frankly, in our grants this year, and we work with them, and Donna had alluded to that the literacy ed faculty is working with the existing grants. Everybody has a partner, a collaborative partner, whether they intended for that to happen or not, because once the projects got started, the folks you're working with, ultimately, you see a good thing and you collaborate. So what do we mean by a partner? We want everyone to identify at least one partner. And this is somebody that can contribute to something like, and I think this might be on page 7. And so I'm going to share with you exactly what we have written in the RFP. And this is somebody that you might have a partner that helps you plan this grant. You might have a partner that helps with decision-making, or maybe the evaluation of the project. You might have a partner that provides financial resources to your project. And that might be an in-kind, that might be an actual dollar match. You might have a partner that provides a space or resources or materials. That kind of partnership is acceptable for the partnerships we are looking for. You might find a partner, whether it be a school or an after-school program, an organization, who helps with the professional learning aspect of your project for teachers or the paraprofessionals or even parents that are engaged in your project. You might have a partner that is just an implementation, not just, let me take that out. That is an implementation partner. They help you get the project moving. They help you do or implement the project. You might have somebody who helps with, again, assessment or budget. It is just another organization, person, group, agency, school, community, person, people who are committed to the outcomes of your project. So what I would suggest if I was looking for a partner is I would take a look at who is eligible to submit this grant, right? These are schools and organizations and after-school projects and community folks and libraries and almost anyone who could commit to that can submit a project can be a partner. Now, that's not to say that that's who the partnerships are limited. What do we meet? What are the minimum expectations for a partner? And very simply, we would expect that the partner understands the project, understands the outcome, understands the spirit of the project, understands the implementation, right? It is somebody who knows what the project is. We would expect that in any partnership that you would have some kind of regular ongoing communication with the partner. So perhaps, you run into a barrier in your project implementation. You have a partner that would be aware of that, right? You share this information about implementation. And so that is what we want. That is what we are seeking in a partner. On page 7 in the grant, we have this outlined of what is a partnership. And I should mention, we will take questions today, but we also have time for questions through those other means of support. And these are technical assistance and email and such. So if your question does not get answered today, or you have a specific, here's the partnership I'm thinking of, you might want to ask it or email it. So please don't think that that throughout the next several months of you developing these projects and writing these proposals, that you wouldn't have our assistance in kind of tightening up this notion of partnerships. So the third, probably the largest, the third large must is student outcomes. Okay, so the purpose of our grant here is to improve literacy as measured by, the third grade reading assessment. And so as such, you are required to not only develop a great project, but provide outcomes. What do you suspect? So there's one required outcome, and that required outcome is impact on student. And that required outcome that has an impact on students is through an assessment. This could be the assessment that your school already uses. This could be an assessment that you use specifically for that special population, because remember, we're looking for targeted special populations for the grant. If you aren't sure about an assessment that you can use, I will refer you over to the resource guide that we will introduce, where there is a multiple page section, 7-8 pages on a list of both formal and informal reading literacy assessments that you can use to measure pre and post growth in the students. Okay, so one of these project outcomes must measure student growth pre and post. And then obviously with a year-long project with a pretty amazing education grant, you also would have some outcomes, and those outcomes might be the grant's influence on school community or parents or other aspects, student motivation, these other areas. But the first outcome has got to 100% be student outcomes, growth and literacy as measured by a pre and post informal or formal assessment. Finally, in the must category, this proposal must be submitted by June 15th. So you have, a lot of time to think about what it is that you can develop. And quite frankly, I have to make this big, broad, bold assumption that everybody on this call has an idea in their head. And because that's what we do as educators when we commute, right? We drive away from school and think about all the problems that we may have faced and how, if only I had an opportunity to submit for an up to $50,000 grant, if only I had the funds or the resources to do so. So I'm fairly sure that most folks on this call already know what that idea would be. So what this project also what we strongly recommend, so they were the musts. Again, you must be aligned with one of the campaign categories: readiness, instruction, or learning. It must be West Virginia students, and you must have a targeted population. You must identify a collaborative partner. And again, that collaborative partner could range in intensity. It doesn't have to be, this is not a matching efforts type of partnership. But what we want is someone to understand the spirit of and be committed to the project as much as you are, whereas they might not be doing as much as the lift. But that's up to you. And again, we must have 2 measurable outcomes, one of which must measure student growth. Projects are due electronically by June 15th. And here's what we would like to see. What we would like to see is some learning opportunities. If you're working with teachers, if you're working with parents, if you're working with whoever's going to be directly working with students, how can you help them grow so they could help the students grow? So if these projects go right to the students, that's great. This is what we want. We want growth in students, but don't forget the person in the middle who may not understand the processes of oral language or good strategies for beginning readers. And these may be parents or aides, or they may be the teachers. So this notion of professional learning is recommended. Matching funds or in-kind cost share. So I think it's really important, and we'll talk about this in budget. The Benedum Foundation does not allow for indirect costs in these grants, sometimes called fringe or FNA. Okay, so that I wanted to make that very clear. And within the grant, we would recommend that you find a matching, that you may find matching funds, in-kind cost share. This does not need to be a one-on-one match. If you're writing up a grant for $50,000, you most certainly don't have to find $50,000 in matching funds, although we did have somebody do that last year. This could be somebody donating some equipment, or donating some resources, or time, right? Your time as a director is an in-kind donation. So when we think about match, it's not always dollars, but it shows a level of commitment of the organization. It shows level of commitment to the funding agency, very simply. We also recommend that you attend a virtual information session, which is right now. So you're here, check, you got the first thing done. This is wonderful. And also request some one-on-one technical assistance, which I have to say, in all the grants that we have ever been involved in, this is probably, this ongoing technical assistance and technical assistance while the grant is being implemented is something so special and so unique, and really gives you a partner de facto in your consultant. So these are our strongly recommends. The next piece I want to just address is what you need to submit. I'm just going to pause to take a drink and a breath and see if there's any pressing question right now on these requirements. I hope you're all thinking about what you're going to write up for this wonderful project. Okay, I'm going to advance down to page 13. Okay.
Also, there is one quick question about how to request technical assistance consulting.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Chrissy. Thank you for watching that for me. That is coming right up. Hold tight on that question, because again, this is absolutely something. If I were writing up this proposal, I would be like in line first to get this one-on-one technical assistance, because it is helpful. So for those of you, and I saw about 6 hands go up who are familiar with this grant from last year, I just want to point out one thing perhaps you submitted last year. So this, what I'm going to share with you on page 13 and 14 is a change. Okay. So first of all, the first piece is that all of your submissions that are due by June 15th are due electronically. So there will be a link that Kenyon is going to show us how to get to in the conversation. And this is what we're looking for. We are looking for a cover sheet. Okay. And the cover sheet has all of the demographic information you would expect on a cover sheet: the who, the why, the where, the when. But I'm going to scroll down there because you could read through those. We need a short abstract. Again, what I do want to point out is, let's look at the third piece here: collaborative educational community partner. As I said, that this is required, and this is one of the first prompts you'll see on the cover sheet. So you must have that ready. A targeted population is another must. And so we put some EGs in there. I can't grab that PDF. And so we put some EGs there. But again, this could be, second grade learners who have never been, who missed out on a full rich kindergarten experience. This can be you digging into your school's data and pulling out this population of children who, for various reasons cannot meet grade level proficiency or having difficulties, or your SES population, special ed. So you'll have a cover sheet that you'll fill in, and the narrative prompts. I want to scroll down to the bottom. Oh, I like this. There are 9. You see, they're not even 10. Here are the narrative prompts, and they very much match what I had just reviewed. We need a statement of need. Okay. We need you to describe the student population. We need you to explain to the reviewers, and these will be evaluated by a review team, how the project is going to engage a larger community of teachers, communities, other populations. Like these projects cannot be, take place in a bubble. And I think we know that, particularly when we are trying to do really good work, the more folks that are engaged and aware of our projects, the better. We would like you to describe how the project will support your organization's efforts. Everyone in this call here is with an organization that has ongoing efforts. How could this project support those efforts? As I had mentioned, you see required, a student growth outcome is a requirement. So we would ask you to list that. You must have a second outcome and how you'll measure it. And then optional. Some of our projects this past year had 3 or 4, and one I remember reviewing had 5 outcomes. So you absolutely have to have 2. If you need more space, then add additional outcomes. We are going to ask you, and this is different for those of you who put in a grant last year, to create an implementation plan month by month. These projects will be awarded in September. So what we have in this electronic form is something that says September, October, November, December, right? And so forth. So we want you to really be thinking with your planning group or yourself or whoever you're running this by, what would this project look like month by month? Now, do we expect the level of detail that this like scrutinizing level of detail? No, but the reviewers are going to want to look, does this plan look reasonable? Is what is proposed in September what one can do in September? What about October? And so what we want is a pretty clear and laid out implementation plan. We have a question on sustainability. What will happen when funding is over? How could you possibly sustain this project? And you see, this is probably where these collaborative partnerships are going to come in handy, quite frankly, with sustainability issues. We ask information about your key personnel. And last, we'd like you to describe your educational partnership. So again, if you go back to page 7 of the RFP, and we've got all these ideas of how somebody can partner with you, look at that, look at your partner, and you and your partner come up with an agreement beforehand of how you're actually going to collaborate. Last, we will have a budget template, which will be an attachment in Word that you could fill out. This looks like we did put some of these categories in. You might have to cross out some of these categories. Some of these categories you might not be using. Perhaps you have no training costs in your grant. Well, then don't fill it out. Perhaps you'll have a director, perhaps you don't. And so again, if you look at this table, expenses are allocated to the grant. That's what you're asking for from us. And costs allocated to the other sources. Again, this is not required. It is not required to have a cash or an in-kind match, but it most certainly is recommended. Okay. And so then we ask you at the very end is to provide a justification statement for each area. So if you're going to have a project director, we'd need a justification of what they're going to do, how, what the amount is, what the expectations are for that job. If you are going to be purchasing equipment, we would like to know, the detail of the justification on that ask. And that will be a attachment to the document. And the last thing, and again, I'm so proud of what Benedum and WPC has put together in these. If you have a paper copy right now, an electronic copy, go immediately to the appendix and look at these beautiful resources that you have provided for you to find the schools, to find the projects, to find the pockets of need if you don't already know them. Perhaps you're here as a representative of a statewide project. Maybe you're not in a specific county. Well, if you're in a specific county, you know where the areas of needs are. Perhaps you're coming to this call today because you're looking for a partner. And I should mention this, if that is the case, I would say this is one of those indications to reach out and have a one-on-one technical support call. Perhaps you have an idea, but you don't have a school or you don't have an organization. This is where we can help put these things together. Close your eyes. I have one more thing that I just want to point out on page 9, because don't we all love timelines? And that is this on page 9. Here we are today on March 18th, 2022 at our session. If you want, you could certainly register for the second session, but it will be the same information that we will be giving out today. We have this phase for technical assistance the entire month of March, the entire month of April, the entire month of May. I would suggest not waiting, but I would also suggest waiting until you have a pretty good idea, at least the skeleton of an idea for these technical assistance calls. Our proposals are due in June. The Benedum will award these in September, and the funding period runs from September 2022 to 2023. Canyon, do you believe that I said that I thought I could do that in 5 minutes? I don't know what planet I'm living is this one, but that is the overview of this RFP, which again, everything is answered in the RFP, but for follow-up one-on-one technical support is where I would go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to turn it over to you, Canyon.
Thanks, Allison. I want to go pretty quickly. That way we have ample time for questions here, but my hope is to just share with you the resources that the WVPEC team has come up with to help you in this process. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The first thing I am going to take you to is the WVPEC website. 1 second. There we go. This is the WVPEC main page. You can see right here that Sparking Early Literacy Growth is in the hero image. This is where you can learn more and submit a proposal. It's also where you could have signed up for today's session. If you go to events and initiatives, we are the second one under STEAMTac. You're going to click on Sparking Early Literacy Growth, and this will take you to the main page. Our team has been really intentional in making sure that all of the resources and information you need is listed here. We want to make sure it's all in one place. That way you're not, searching or, asking for them from your colleagues. So here is the application link. And then again, of course, the link for today's session. If you scroll down, you'll see the request for proposals. I dropped the direct link in the chat, so you should already have that, but it can be accessed here as well. And then the Sparking Early Literacy Growth resource guide, which I'll get to in a moment. Here you'll see a snapshot of the timeline, again, identical to what is listed in the RFP. There's some links in there as well that can redirect you to the right places, some additional information. And then down here, we just have who you can contact and how to schedule for technical assistance. Finally, if you need some inspiration, there's some really great narratives of our wonderful projects from last year that you can read about, as well as additional links to the resource guide and the proposals. I want to show you really quickly before we get to the resource guide, just how to sign up for a technical assistance session, because I think that's probably what everyone's waiting for. So if you click register for a consulting session, it's going to take you to a Sign Up Genius page. We decided to do it this way this year. That way it cuts down on the back and forth correspondence between PEC and your literacy consultant and your party there. It'll bring up this page. You'll see all of the slots that we have available. You'll simply click sign up. You'll enter your name and information, and it will send you a confirmation email with a calendar invitation as well as the Zoom information. We really want to expedite this process. That way it meets your schedule. But if you have any issues or you're not able to access this form or none of the times work for you, please reach out to me, and we're more than willing to work with you in that way as well. But we hope this helps alleviate the stress that comes with scheduling busy people. So let me take you back to our website here. I just want to touch on the resource guide very quickly. Allison already sort of went over the information that is the resources that are in the RFP as far as the student data that is listed there in the appendix. But I want to show you the resource guide really quickly. This is the resource guide. You'll see on the first page here, it sort of just gives you an overview of how we would like the resource guide to be used. Basically, this provides research, examples of other West Virginia initiatives, as well as the assessments that Allison talked about earlier that can help you with your grant proposal. Here you can see all of the different areas that we address. Of course, there's an overview of early literacy in West Virginia, the grant focus areas. We also included sections on remote and virtual learning because of the reality of the situation we're living in today, as well as resources for teacher professional learning as well. I really, really love the appendix at the end of this resource guide, because not only does it give you some explanation on the terms, it also gives you a really cool summary table of national studies on early literacy that Chrissy and Allison put together that is really helpful. And then, of course, additional resources and references for further reading. Just really quickly to show you how it's set up, I want to go to, sorry for the scrolling, the first section. Here you'll see the literacy focus areas. You'll see school readiness. Under each of the grant focus areas, we have selected resources. A lot of these are hyperlinks that will redirect you to their site. And then we also have West Virginia initiatives, things that are happening right here in West Virginia that we feel are helpful to whatever cause that you're trying to pursue. And there's the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library that's already been discussed multiple times today. Each section is set up in the same way. So again, we hope that this is really easy for you to use. But if you have any questions or you're looking for a particular resource that might not be listed here, please reach out to us and we'll do our best to point you in the right direction. All right, the last thing that I just want to briefly mention is if you go all the way to the bottom, where it says grant resources and forms, as we've talked about, you are required to have a collaborative partner just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, including your organization's leadership and administration, as well as your partners. We would like you to complete a partnership acknowledgement form that looks like this. You can download it as a fillable PDF. You simply put the information in there, add a signature, and then upload it with your application that we're going to walk through very shortly here. If there's any questions, I'll take a quick pause and allow you to put them in the chat. But again, we hope that the website is a central hub for information for you. If you have any trouble at all accessing it, please reach out to me or the general wvpec@mail.wvu.edu address.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison and Canyon. This was excellent. I know you had to hurry, but it's just great to see it up on the screen and know where to go for it. Everything's on the web page, is what we say. But Allison, did you have anything else to add before we go into Q&A?
No, all I wanted to say is, do you see how I said WVPEC really wants to support you in these grants and really wants to find some high quality grants to fund? So no, I have nothing to add except I'm excited to hear some questions.
And I just
really,
add-
I'm sorry, Donna, just really briefly, I want to show you just what the application portal will look like. So when you click apply now, you'll see the WVPEC logo at the top. And this is what the application form will look like. Just so if you're redirected to this page, you are in the correct place. This is WVU Qualtrics, which is our information survey management tool. If you have any questions or issues using this, please reach out to me. I'm unfortunately very well versed in Qualtrics, and so I'll be able to help you there. Sorry to interrupt, Donna. I just wanted to.
No, and
that.
Canyon aren't all that's fillable, right on the screen, but you need to fill in every section or you
Correct.
can't go on, correct?
Correct. Every section is required. So if it doesn't allow you to move forward in the survey, there's 3 pages based on what is broken down in the RFP, the cover page, the narrative, and the budget. So if it doesn't allow you to move forward, that means you probably have something missing. I just encourage you to go back and check and see, what box isn't filled in. If you still have issues, reach out to us.
Great. And before we go right to Q&A, I just wanted to add, when you think about why Benedum would fund this, one of the big reasons, and we hear it all the time from Melanie and the board and Jen Giovanetti, the president, is they're looking for ideas from you all, the field, the people that know it best, so that others can replicate it in West Virginia if it's successful. And for you to be testing it out and trying it out, it just means the world to people that are looking for great ideas. So that's an important factor.
And I
Okay.
think, Donna, if I could just add one piece to that, these are not projects that you need to create a novel project for, right? You could support an existing program, project, or initiative. So if you're working with the libraries, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're creating a new program. I mean, you certainly can, but if there's something that's existing that needs this infusion of innovation, transform it to transform the existing project, that's an option too.
That's great. Chrissy, do we have questions in the chat?
Not yet. So I think this is a great time to put your question in the chat or raise your hand and, verbalize the question. Kenyon, I had just one question that I thought people might be interested to know while they're filling out the application. While all of the components are required, are applicants able to save and come back, or should they be prepared to fill out the application in its entirety kind of in one sitting?
Yeah, I would recommend that you follow the RFP and have those materials ready just to ensure that you don't lose that information. I would like to think that it will allow you to go back and forth, but just in case, if you have your materials ready, then you can just copy and paste them into the Qualtrics form, and we can ensure that, all of your information is complete. I'll also be keeping an eye on those as well. So if I notice any issues, I'd be happy to reach out if I think anything looks incomplete. But thanks, Chrissy.
Yep.
Great. And Canyon, do you want to go over just one more time if they don't want to wait, if they're anxious and they have questions before March 31st, what email do they use?
I dropped my email in the chat. So my email is there. You can also email wvpec@mail.wvu.edu, which I just sent as well. I also monitor that one. So no matter who you email, I'll probably be the one to respond to you, but we'll make sure that we get you pointed in the right direction.
Great. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I just want to thank everybody for your interest in Sparking Early Literacy Phase 2 and your commitment to your students. That's wonderful. And certainly want to thank our panel of audience here with Kelly and Allison and Canyon and Chrissy. Really appreciate that. They do a great job. So have a good rest of the day, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.
Thanks all.